All right. Well, thank you so much for having us all the way out from Arizona. And what does a state representative from Arizona have to do with all of you Pennsylvania folks? Well, I'll tell you, we have two of the probably most corrupt swing states in our nation as far as elections go. So I actually think I have a lot in common with you, unfortunately. So, I'll start just by telling you a little bit about myself, because I never ever had it on my to-do list to be a politician. Honestly, I have to kind of spit that word out of my mouth a little bit still, because when you think of politicians, it kind of gives you a sickly feeling in your stomach, because as American citizens, we have watched our government just go more and more down the toilet, in my opinion. And they have forgotten, a lot of our elected officials have forgotten, we're in charge of our government, we the people. And they get in there in their cushy jobs, whether it's state or federal, and I'll tell you right now, from the first day I started as a freshman 2 terms ago, I'm in my 2nd term, I must be insane, I actually ran again. But when I got in there as a freshman, I realized very quickly it was the lobbyists running the show. The special interests were constantly trying to get the new legislators, and that's even at the state level. And we can all look at the DC level and see it's that much worse, but it's happening at the state level. So a group of people like you that are here, you're obviously very involved. I love coming and speaking to groups like this because you understand it's time to take your government back. And God does use every single one of us to do that. And the fact that you have a pastor here and an individual here who has started a group where the first principle they have is the Bible, because we're losing that very quickly. Our churches not being involved is the main reason we're where we're at these days. And I go every day, every new session, I have all these plans to run legislation that's pro-life, run those types of things. But I can't do anything as long as the churches are being quiet about those topics, because we cannot change hearts and minds with legislation. The church has to change hearts and minds first, and then maybe legislators like myself can get somewhere with legislation. We're doing this backwards in a way. But going back to how I got involved in this crazy world of politics, which let me tell you, I have 5 children. I thought they gave me gray hair, and I went into politics and realized my kids had nothing on politics. But every gray hair has been worth it to fight for my constituents and to give people just like you hope that if we can get people in these seats that understand this, that have Constitution first, every time I look at a piece of legislation, I ask myself, is this constitutional? That's the first question I ask. And then I ask myself, is it the proper role of government? Because we're supposed to be small government people, and a lot of your elected officials have forgotten that. So that's my second question, and is it good policy? Those are the 3 things I gauge things on. Now, as far as my 5 kids, that is who got me involved in politics. After the 2020 election, how many of you think that that was the most fair, free and fair election that's ever occurred? Okay, I figured I was in good company here. So after I saw what happened with the 2020 election, I looked at my 5 children and I saw the direction that our country was going, and I could not believe it. I was devastated looking at this. This is America, and it did not seem like that when we watched that election get ripped off, quite frankly. And so I decided I was going to do something about it. Now, all of you sitting here today, one thing I will tell you, if you feel pulled to run for office, do it. If you feel called to pray for your elected officials, please do that, because that is probably the most important thing you can do for us. Every time I'm having a moment in politics, or I'm questioning, why, God, do you have me here when I'm barely making a dent? Someone will call me or text me or look at me to my face and say, I've been praying for you. and I feel it. We feel it. So keep those prayers going up for people involved. But in 2020, I never ever thought I'd be standing here today, like I said, as a politician. But I was looking at what was going on and I couldn't believe it. And so I got elected as a grassroots candidate. And let me tell you, the establishment, and I'm going to have to correct you. Maricopa's bad. Who here has heard of Pima County? Tucson. That's where I'm at. I represent Pima County. Our recorder has she, her on her profile, and she is a very outright Democrat activist. That's Pima County. Even worse than Maricopa. Did you think it could get worse? Pima's worse. So in 2022, myself and 2 other people, we were running against the establishment, our own. We never ever thought that the battle would be against within our own party. I was very gullible when I went in there. And we actually, in our Republican primary, we ran against an unrepentant retired abortion doctor in our Republican primary. And we were shunned for speaking out against her. And I knew at that very moment, there's so much more to this than what I thought. We are in the spiritual battle of our lives right now. And we got President Trump back in there this time, but you know what? He's not going to be there forever. And we have to keep that in mind as we move forward. Now, I'm very happy we got him back in there and everybody kept fighting, because I was a little bit worried that we would get him back in and everyone would go back to sleep like so many of us were. I was spending my time yelling at the television. So I decided, let's do something else other than griping and complaining, and that's why I ran for office. So we defeated all odds and we got in there as grassroots. I'm very, very honored to be an Arizona Freedom Caucus member. But let me tell you, we battle the establishment every day in the legislature. Our budget fight this year, it's kind of like, I have 5 kids, but 3 of my kids were adopted. So I gave birth to 2, but you have a baby, the last thing you ever want to think about, again, women in here, is having another baby right after the fact. After this budget this year, I was like, I'm not running again. But it just reminded me kind of that. So I'll give it a little time. But it's a battle. It's a battle. We're in a battle right now. But those of you here, like I said, that are here for a reason, because I feel that you see that you're here trying to figure out what's my part in that battle. And you inspire me. You inspire people like me and people like Seth to keep fighting, because it's a fight every day. The media hates my guts. Some of my own colleagues hate my guts because I stand up and I point out where they're failing you all the time. But as you gear up for another election in 26, because after 2020, it got a lot of us involved. Then 2022 happened in Arizona. How many of you have heard of Kari Lake? Exactly. That race got stolen from her. Kari Lake should have been our governor in Arizona. So we had to go to Plan B when we got Katie Hobbs instead. And Kari Lake, God is using her in a different way. But I realized there are so many things that we have to keep fighting for. Because, as Seth will explain, if we don't correct our elections, I always am careful not to say fix our elections, because our elections are already kind of fixed. But correct our elections, I really believe that is the civil rights issue of our time. For example, currently, I just wrote a letter to the Attorney General in Arizona. Now, she won her seat by a few hundred votes against Abraham Hamadeh. They left over 9,000 provisional ballots uncounted in that race. And the Democrat won the seat. Now, Democrats are better than us, Republicans, in a lot of ways, because even though she barely won, and I'll say won because she didn't, she should not be our Attorney General, won that seat, she has every step of the way, every minute since she has used that office as a weapon against Republicans. I just sent her a letter. Actually, one of my staffers was worried she's going to do the same to me now. But you know what? You have to be as bold as lions. The pastor just said that. You can't step back from these people and let them continue to walk all over us, the people of the United States. But I actually had a Democrat colleague of mine, believe it or not, and this is to give you hope. And I do want to leave you with hope today, because sometimes we look around and things just always seem crazy. We get a victory here, and then something else happens, and we feel defeated again. But that's why hope in one man is not good. Hope in God is the only thing we have, and we have to remember that in this battle. But as far as my Democrat colleague, she actually messaged me, and she said, "Does this look like ballot harvesting to you?" And she showed me some screenshots. And because she was afraid that her own party would retaliate against her, she asked me to file the complaint with the AG. So I will tell you, there are Democrats that are coming around, and they're seeing that 2/3 of Americans do not trust our elections anymore. And I've met them in Arizona. So that's why we have to fight, regardless of any fears we might have that we're going to be retaliated against, or whatever the case may be. And we have to know that this is not just a Republican issue anymore. What Seth is going to talk about is an American citizen issue. A lot of us are sick and tired of not trusting that our very, very sacred vote counts in our elections. That is the one thing we have, where we have a voice and we get to choose who represents us. And if we feel like that has been taken away from us, what do we have? That's why it is the issue of our time. So we fight. I'm very, very honored during this fight to have met my wonderful husband, who you will get to meet shortly. I don't have the bad dad jokes like him, but be warned, I did warn you about that when it's his turn to come up here and speak. But I think I just want to, like I said, I want to make you feel hopeful today. Because sometimes it seems that we make all of this progress and then somehow it goes backwards. That's at least what I feel, even being in my position in the state legislature in Arizona. But if we don't continue forward and continue to fight, we just hand it to the people that are trying to take our country from us. And that is not an option, as far as I'm concerned. So let's leave today feeling hopeful for our future. Let's remember that Donald Trump, as President Donald Trump, he's doing great things for our country, but he only has a certain amount of time to do that. So it's up to all of us in this room to continue that when he's gone, to continue fighting for those candidates that you know are not going to go in there and sell you out, because that's exactly what they do. Another real quick story, my very first session, 3 days in, I was told by leadership I needed to tone down my Twitter. That was what she said to me. And I said, no, I will not. It's my First Amendment right. I'm going to speak truth. 2 weeks later, she told me again, can you please tone it down? You're really making the lobbyists nervous. I said, great. And I wear that as a badge of honor, because the lobbyists still hate my guts. I'm probably enemy number one. But in all seriousness, be bold in truth. That is the best thing we can do. Keep fighting. And take some of the knowledge that you learned today from Seth, because he's going to give you some really usable steps that you can take to continue fighting so that our elections can be free and fair again. And I don't mean to call her out, but I talked to Beth out front, and she really inspired me, because it sounds like I have met some really good grassroots warriors here in Pennsylvania that I go back to Arizona and I try to encourage people to emulate what you're doing here. Because Beth talked to me about the voter rolls, how cleaning the voter rolls is something that they took on themselves. If your elected officials are not going to listen to you and do what you want them to do, you do it. Because in Pima County, where I'm from, I had a voter, her ballot was voted after she moved to Texas. No kidding. The day that her address changed in Texas, her ballot was requested in Pima County. And when I went to the recorder and tried to call her out on that, I've sent 3 letters to no avail. But Seth and I are kind of going bigger, which I don't know how much we can say about it, but I've decided with the help of Seth and another one of my colleagues, a representative up in Maricopa County, that we're gonna go to the feds. Because if you can't get things solved at the local level, or you don't have warriors like this that do it for you, then we actually have a DOJ, I believe, that will listen at this point in time. So fight, 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 just like President Trump said. Thank you so much for having us way out here in Pennsylvania. Thank you.